Depending on where you spend your time on the internet, the name Rothschild might conjure up an image of investment bankers, winemakers, or philanthropists. But in some circles, the name Rothschild is shorthand for a shadowy Jewish cabal that controls everything, from world governments to the weather. And that's because the Rothschild family has been at the center of a conspiracy theory for over 150 years. And though many Jews make fun of these kinds of conspiracy theories, for the last time, guys, we don't have space lasers. The violence they provoke is anything but funny. So, why are so many people convinced that a single Jewish family controls the world? Our story begins in the 1760s when a German Jew named Mayer Amschel Rothschild founded what would become known as the Rothschild banking dynasty. His profession wasn't a coincidence. Long before Mayer was born, European authorities had decided they really didn't like their Jewish minority populations. Jews were forced to live in ghettos, prohibited from owning land, and shut out of most industries, with one notable exception: money lending. All three of the primary Abrahamic religions have complicated financial laws. Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike are prohibited from lending money with interest. But these rules only apply to dealings with people in your religion. Jews could charge interest to Christians. Christians could theoretically charge interest to Jews. So if a Christian needed a loan, he turned to a Jewish lender. The Christian borrower got the money he needed. The Jewish lender was able to make a living. Sounds like a win-win, right? Not exactly, because this whole system puts Jewish people in the very unpleasant position of loaning money to their Christian neighbors, which meant collecting debts.
I'm coming to collect my money.
No one enjoys being asked for money, and no one likes paying interest, no matter how low the rate. Remember, most Jews lived in ghettos. The only time they interacted with Christians was when they came to collect. So over time, Jews developed a reputation for being greedy, cheap, and obsessed with money. Ah, the birth of an anti-Semitic trope. Ironically, money lending wasn't even particularly profitable, but without a whole lot of other career options, Jews made the best of their position, and many ended up working as bankers and financiers. Which brings us to 1740s Frankfurt. Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born in the Frankfurt ghetto to a religious family. He'd trained to be a rabbi, but his studies were cut short when his parents died, leaving him in need of a source of income. He found work as an apprentice in a banking house, because even in the 1700s, young Jewish men turned to finance when it was time to get a real job. I guess some things never change. Mayer rose through the ranks, eventually working his way into the position of court Jew to a Hessian nobleman. Yeah, that was a real title for a real job, which basically boiled down to being the personal accountant and banker to very wealthy and influential folks. Side note, imagine if we were still forced to add Jew to our job titles. My LinkedIn feed would be wild. Anyway, Mayer did so well for himself that he decided to open his own banking house. He sent his sons to take the show on the road and establish franchises in England, France, Austria, and Italy. By the mid-1800s, the Rothschilds were one of the most wealthy and famous families in Europe. They may have been Jews, but they were very well connected, doing business and rubbing shoulders with Europe's political elite, often working in tandem with their local governments. They helped finance their nation's armies. They provided a loan that helped Great Britain acquire the Suez Canal. They were bankers for the czars. They helped Brazil raise the £2 million it needed to pay for its liberation from Portugal. So of course, they were the perfect targets for anti-Semitic nonsense. Remember, for centuries, Europeans had seen Jews as greedy, manipulative money hoarders. A Jew couldn't just be wealthy and successful through hard work, and making the best of his exclusion from most industries. There always had to be some dark reason for Jewish success. And a guy named Mathieu Georges Darneval, I'm probably butchering that, thought he knew exactly what this dark reason was. He wrote it all down in a French-language pamphlet titled The Edifying and Curious History of Rothschild I, King of the Jews, which, as far as fantasy titles go, is a pretty good one. But even better was his bizarre pen name, Satan. I wish I were joking. I guess he thought writing under the name Satan would give him some credibility since, I don't know, Jews and Satan were working together?
That's a stretch.
I don't know why he chose that pen name, but I do know that I'm honestly grateful to anti-Semites for making themselves such an easy punchline. The 36-page pamphlet was full of all sorts of spicy accusations against the Rothschild family. But the big one, the one that kicked off this whole conspiracy, went something like this. It was June 1850, and Nathan Mayer Rothschild, Mayer Amschel's son, was watching a terrible battle unfold. From his position on the battlefield, he watched Napoleon's forces make their bloody, doomed last stand at Waterloo. I get it, they didn't have TV back then, but still, kind of a weird thing to do, right? But according to Satan, Rothschild Jr. was there for one reason and one reason only: greed. Because the second Napoleon lost, Nathan was off on his fastest horse, eager to cross the English Channel as soon as he could to get back to the London branch of his family's bank. And though a terrible storm had left all the ships anchored, Nathan wasn't going to let a little thing like the forces of nature stop him. He bribed a fisherman to ferry him to England through the wind and waves. Nathan made it to London 24 hours before anyone knew about Napoleon's defeat. He used that time to buy all the stock whose price had been driven down by the war. So by the time the news made it to London and the stock market reacted, Nathan had made an absolute killing, 20 million francs in one fell swoop, all by manipulating the stock market and trading on information of national importance that he kept to himself. In other words, one of the biggest, most outrageous examples of insider trading ever. What a jerk, right? Well, no, because literally none of that happened. Satan just made it up. Historians have confirmed that Nathan Rothschild was nowhere near Waterloo that day. He didn't know about the outcome of the war before anyone else. He didn't make a killing on the stock market because of it. Satan even made up the storm on the English Channel. In fact, Satan didn't write this all down until 1846, a full 30 years after the Battle of Waterloo, and a decade after Nathan's death. It's easy to spread rumors about someone who can't defend themselves or contradict you. But you know what they say, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Like many other gripping works of fiction, the pamphlet was a commercial hit, selling tens of thousands of copies throughout Europe. Even when the actual facts came out, the conspiracy evolved to fit. Nathan wasn't there? No problem. It was one of his agents. He never crossed the channel? Okay, it was a well-trained pigeon that carried the news. Like a sick game of telephone, the story grew more and more outrageous. For example, Nathan didn't just sit on the news of Napoleon's defeat. He even spread false rumors to drive down stock prices even further before buying. Again, false. But that didn't matter. Ever heard of confirmation bias? People are much more likely to believe stories that confirm what they already know. And since many Europeans knew that Jews were rich, manipulative, greedy, and generally bad people, well, it wasn't that much of a leap to believe that A, the Rothschilds were jerks, and B, they used their wealth to control world events. Look, I'm not saying the Rothschilds weren't wealthy or well-connected, because they absolutely were. And that's one reason the pamphlet caught on. Once you see a wealthy, influential person, it's a small leap to believe they influence everything. And once you believe that, it's easy to blame them when things go wrong. And if you grew up in an environment of casual, ambient anti-Semitism, well, of course the Rothschilds were terrible. They were Jews. So I doubt most people today know about Satan's pamphlet or the Waterloo story. But that doesn't matter, because Rothschild is now a synonym for Jewish cabal that controls world events. Only, much less of a mouthful. It's no longer cool to blame the Jews for everything, but swap out Jews with Rothschilds, and you're not an anti-Semite, you're just questioning the influence of the elites. In fact, the Rothschild conspiracy is consistently one of the most viral, trendy, and searched for anti-Semitic conspiracies on social media. Just as they did in the 1800s, people continue to embellish the legend with new, fantastical details, like how the Rothschilds own world banks, including the US Federal Reserve. They don't. Or that they control the weather and use space lasers to strategically start wildfires.
You did suggest that the California wildfires at the time had been started by PG&E in conjunction with the Rothschilds using a space laser in order to clear room for a high-speed rail project. They're your words, not mine.
False. Sorry, Marjorie. People even believed that Mr. Burns, the greedy, evil billionaire from The Simpsons, was based on Lord Jacob de Rothschild. He isn't. The Simpsons' Jewish creator, Matt Groening, confirmed it.
Excellent.
So, if they're not the world's puppet masters, who are the Rothschilds? Well, they're still primarily a banking family, though many family members have branched out into other rich person activities, like art collecting, winemaking, and environmental activism. They're still wealthy, though not as wealthy as they used to be since so many of their assets were seized during the Holocaust. They use those funds to support charitable causes of all kinds, including Jewish ones. And yet, some conspiracists believe they're sitting on a secret fortune of $500 trillion. That's 50 trillion more than the estimated total private wealth in the world. But go off, conspiracists. Sadly, conspiracists don't really care about facts. If you're far enough down the rabbit hole, a fact-based article from a reliable news source looks like another piece in the puzzle. The Rothschilds or the Jewish media must have paid for the article. They must have paid for this video. I wish they had. If you've made the mistake of reading a few of our comments, then you've seen this stuff firsthand. But here's the bright side. According to a poll from the Anti-Defamation League, roughly 70% of people who harbor anti-Semitic attitudes have never even met a Jew. People who actually know Jews are far less likely to hold anti-Semitic beliefs. And look, I'm not saying we should all go invite some conspiracy theorist to Shabbat dinner, though if that's your thing, go for it. But it seems clear that when facts and figures don't amount to much, being ourselves and showing people who we really are just may be the most powerful tool we have in the fight against conspiracy theories.